The two stamp sets that are featured in this class are beautiful on their own, and they're also beautiful combined together. I love the Inspirational Sketches. I knew I had to have this as soon as it was released with Stampin' Up. I love all things to do with nature, and definitely any stamp set with a bird, I think I own it. I love birds and nature. And of course this one with the trees and the flowers, the dies that come with this, or that you can get as a bundle and save 20%, or you can buy them individually, are pretty awesome as well. So I've already been using this, but this has gorgeous dies, and you can see that this one here, this circle, lines up with this image. You have this die that lines up with this one. This die lines up with this. Then we have the lone tree, which is right here. And then of course you've got your bigger wreath with the berries. You've got your different pine boughs, the beautiful trees that you can put along here, and of course coordinate with this. Oh, and look at this one with the oak leaves. Oh my goodness. This is such a cool, beautiful, beautiful set of dies and stamps. So I'm very excited to use these and show you the cards that I've created using these products. All right, the first thing you want to do is pull your bird out, because we are going to make a mask. And if you've never done masking before, it's a technique that has been around pretty much, I would dare say, since stamping has come on the scene, and it's just so cool. I am pulling in my last sheet of my masking paper from Stampin' Up. Now, when I first started stamping years ago, we're talking 1985, I was masking everything because it was such a cool, fun technique. And I just used Post-it notes, computer paper, and just put them all in an envelope, and then I had them whenever I needed them. I didn't have to keep cutting them out. So I'm just going to use my black StazOn on this. This stamp has already been used today, which is why it already has a bit of StazOn ink on it. And the masking paper, you can see this is the back where you peel it off. I'm stamping on the front, and I'm just going to stamp that right there. And you know what, while we have the masking paper out, let's go ahead and stamp the mushrooms as well. And I am just using, what block am I using? C? D. I'm using block D. Let's just get all of our masks done at once, and then we've got them. And my flower is floating around somewhere. Here we go. And you don't have to use StazOn for your masks. Of course, you could use any type of ink pad you want. Now all I'm going to do is cut these out. And you want to try to cut pretty much right along the outline image. You want to get as close to that image as you can. Just take your time, move your paper as well as your scissors. I am going to keep my branch in the mask, so I want to make sure I don't cut that out accidentally. And then around the tail, just kind of wiggle it. Now there's two spots in here. I do want to cut those out. So let me grab my foam mat. You can use an X-Acto knife. I'm just going to start my cut by poking in my scissors there. And this may seem fiddly, but it's really not. And again, once you've got your mask, it'll go a long ways before you have to make another one. And sometimes you might want two masks. If you're wanting to create multiple images with the mask behind it, you might want two masks. Some techniques would use two, but for today's cards, we only need one mask of each image. All right, there's my beautiful little sparrow. And let's move on to these ones. I'm also cutting down here in the bottom corner there of the scissors versus up at the tips. I find I have more control when I do that. I don't know if that's just me, but that's how I tend to do it a lot. And I'll come back in and get that little bit afterwards. You can see I started at the corner where my two blades meet, and then I just close the scissors and then go right to the tip. So just a slow, long motion. The little tips work good in those tiny little areas as well. Okay. This little bit here, I'm not going to worry about it, but where there's a bigger piece like this, I am going to cut that out. You don't have to if you don't want to. Same thing for in here and in here. I'm going to cut that out. So what I'm going to do is just follow inside the lines here. There's that piece. See how easy? And then I'm actually going to go in and just cut around. Just follow the image. Now these little bits in here, for me personally, that's too fiddly for me. I'm not going to worry about that. This, I think this is part of this stem here, okay? So I'm not cutting this part out, but I don't want that to be jagged, so I'm going to smooth that off, okay? So there are my pretty little cluster of mushrooms, and then I saved the easiest one for last, didn't I? This one's going to be really easy to cut. Okay, masks are cut. That wasn't so hard, right? And now you've got them to create magic with. And I absolutely love these. I think these images are just gorgeous. This is such a fantastic stamp set. I'm not going to show all the die cutting for today's class in the video because I think most of you know how to do the die cutting, but in case it's new to someone taking this class, the die cut and emboss machine from Stampin' Up comes with the platform, which is known as number 1. Then I have the next plate, which is number 2, and then my clear plates, which work like a sandwich. So I always, you know, when I have people new to these machines, I always say, imagine your clear plates like your bread. You're making a sandwich and you're putting your paper and your die in between the sandwich, okay? So I have my Fairy Vanilla cardstock and then my die, and then you always want to make sure you leave a little bit of room at the tip so it almost like snaps shut. If you've got things too close to the edge there, they're not going to go through. And when you put them in your machine, you know that you've put them in far enough because the handle, which is not even showing here, the handle will move. When you push that, you know that you are ready to rock and roll. So you just run it through. Easy peasy. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that with my boho blue next. And this time I'm going to use the larger of the 2 circle dies. Okay, I'm going to use this one and run it through. I know there's a lot of people still discovering stamping, which is very exciting. Very, very exciting. I know I've met quite a few people recently who didn't even know what stamping was, and so this is all brand new to them. And I'm very excited because I know what a fun hobby this is. And I think a lot of us who have been stamping for a long time sometimes forget, you know, what may seem basic to us now was not once upon a time a basic thing for us, right? We're always evolving and learning, but we sure all started somewhere, didn't we? And quite frankly, I think stamping is just as much fun, if not more fun, than it ever was compared to when I first started, which was a long time ago. Long time ago. So let me get rid of all these scrap bits. Okie dokie, my friends, time to do some stamping. I'm going to ink my bird with my black StazOn. Make sure your ink pad's well inked. Put some re-inker on it if you haven't for a while. And then I'm making sure that I've got his tail in there and his beak and his head. He fits in there beautifully. Look at that. Beautiful just as is. Even without coloring, this little sparrow is gorgeous. Now, I did a little bit of a Google research as far as what colors to use when coloring a sparrow. And of course, there's different sparrows, but there's a sparrow called the white-throated sparrow that has some beautiful blues and yellows as well as the browns. So that is where I'm getting my inspiration for coloring this bird today. So I'm pulling in boho blue, wild wheat, Cajun craze, pecan pie, and oh, we need some gray. So I'm going to pull in some, let's see, smoky slate. Okay. Now, we are going to start coloring, and then we will do our mask. I am going to start with my, let's see now, I'm going to start with my wild wheat. Okay. And I am going to use our water painters. So this is the smallest tip. You get a set of 3. Here's another one with the medium-sized tip. Where's the one with the full size? I got stuff all over my desk here. Here we go. This is the other one that comes in this set of 3 from Stampin' Up. I haven't even used this one yet. This is a whole new set because I needed a new set after all these years of using them. Okay, what I am going to do is I'm going to make a palette. Now you can use your re-inkers and put your re-inkers on your block, but I'm just going to use my ink pads right onto my clear block. So there's my wild wheat. I'm going to take my Cajun craze, put some of that on. I probably could have used a bigger block, but it's okay. We don't need a lot of that color. And put some boho blue on the end. Let me get my palette all ready for me there. I'm going to grab another block. I'm going to put my gray on this end. It doesn't even look like there is any, but there is. We'll put some pecan pie in the middle. Don't need a lot. And we're also going to need some garden green, not for the bird, but for the leaves. So we'll put a little bit of that on there too. So there are my colors, okay? Pretty fun. You're also going to want to have a paper towel handy. Let me zoom in for you guys. All right, next thing. When I am using my water painters, I like to squeeze it. You can actually see the word push on there, so that's where you're going to want to squeeze it until I have my water come out. I'm going to start with my gray first. Just pick some of that up, and I'm going to go in and do his little belly. Now we stamped it with Stays On, which means it's not going to bleed, but we also don't want to oversaturate this paper because it's not watercolor cardstock, it's our very vanilla. So as long as you go lightly with your water, you can build up the layers and build up the layers. So go light first, and actually we're also going to need some basic gray because I am going to want some darker gray on this little precious birdie here. Okay, next I'm going to take my pecan pie, which is here in the middle. I squeezed my water, so you can see I got a pool of water. I'm going to let that excess water flow out onto my paper towel, and I'm going to color in his wings completely. Just a light wash of color, because again, you can go back in and add more color as you need to. So you can see I'm adding more. Now I'm cleaning my brush on my paper towel, and I'm going to squeeze my water painter into that boho blue, get some water going, work in some of that ink, tap it off on my paper towel so I don't have a big blob of color where I don't want it. And I'm going to do some blue here, sort of around his neck, and up into his head, around his beak. And I think I'm going to put some blue down here actually. Okay, let that dry. Now I'm going into my wild wheat, which I love this color. I'm going to do his beak. And I'm just going to add some wild wheat up here. I'm going to leave this alone. I'm not going to color that in. So now I'm going to pick up some more boho blue. See how I can add my color. Just make it darker. Go around here. Maybe we'll pull some of that boho blue down a little bit. Okay. I'm going to pick up some more pecan pie. So now you can see I'm starting to layer on my color. See how cool that is? Just magical. Going on his tail. Maybe a little bit just in the lines here. A little bit over here in the shading, I should say. So you can see it coming together. Now I'm going to pick up some of that Cajun craze. I'm going to add a little bit up here. Look at that pop of beautiful color. And over here. And I want this to be a little bit lighter, so I'm squeezing more water. And I'm going to tap it on my paper towel and just do a little bit over here. Okay. Remember, how I color it might not be how you color it. You do you. You do what makes your heart happy, and it doesn't have to be perfect. The whole point is just to have fun. I'm adding some Cajun craze to the tail feathers. And just keep building on the color until you're happy with it. So I'm picking up a little bit of that pecan pie again. I'm going up on the wings. Okay. So pretty. You definitely have to look up the white-throated sparrow online and see how beautiful this little bird is. You know what? I might not need basic gray. If I just go back into that smoky slate, I think we're okay. See? Yes. See? Now I've got my darker gray. I love watercoloring. It is so much fun and so relaxing. And I'm just following along the lines that are already there with that stamped image. Beautiful. I'm going to take a little bit of that gray and go on his beak a little bit. Now, this part is optional, but I'm going to take the fine tip of my basic black marker and just go over his eye, just to make it really good and dark. And I'm going to take my wild wheat and color in his little leggies. And I'm going to blend in a little bit of pecan pie with that, just because I don't want it to be so yellow. So that's the other beautiful thing about when you are water painting, is you can blend the colors in. See how I'm just decided to add some to the tail like that? I'm just being a bit of a rebel now, aren't I? And I'm actually going to pick up some boho blue. I did not squeeze any water. Why? Because I want it to be more intense now. See? I'm making that blue just a little bit more intense. So fun. Some more pecan pie. Now, if you only have markers in some of these colors instead of the ink pads, go ahead and scribble your marker. I'm talking Stampin' Write markers, not our Stampin' Blends, because the blends are an alcohol marker and we are working with water, so we want to use our water markers. And I'm just going on top here with some more pecan pie because I want that to be darker. And same thing, make it a little bit darker down here. I'm happy with that, so I am going to leave well enough alone. And I'm really pleased with how my bird turned out. So I could go ahead and zap this with the heat tool, but I'm just gonna set it aside to dry and bring in the card base, because I can go ahead and stamp that, and then we will move on to the masking magic. So we are using crumb cake cardstock for the card bases in this class. So this is 8.5 by 5.5 folded, scored and folded at the 4 1/4 mark. Okay, and I am going to take my crumb cake and I'm going to bring in the Encircled in Nature stamp, and I'm going to use this stamp and this stamp just to add a pretty little background behind where our bird is going to go. And actually, I want to use pecan pie first, not the crumb cake. Okay. So just, I'm keeping in mind my image is going to go there. So I kind of want the sprays of the background to go behind it. Okay. So I'm going to stamp this one here. I'm going to clean this off. I'm just using a rag right now. And now I'm bringing in this leaf. And if you want, you can stamp again without re-inking, so you get that beautiful second generation look to it, which never grows old. Okay. If you want to add more, go ahead and add more. Go ahead and overlap on top of that previous stamping. Now I'm bringing in the stamp with the flowers, this one right here, okay? And I am going to ink it with my pecan pie, and I'm just going to stamp it, actually we'll stamp it over here, just like so. Oops. And we'll stamp it here again without re-inking it. I don't even know if that's going to show. See, I have that little bit coming up there, and I like that a lot. So I'm going to re-stamp that down over here. I'm going to stamp right on top, right over there. Look at that. Seriously, you guys. Just a sentiment. Just a sentiment right here, and this card would be complete. That is beautiful. But see how that's going to go on like so? My goodness. All right, but before we do that, I'm going to pull in my crumb cake, which I re-inked before this video, so it's going to be really dark, and I don't want it to be super dark. So I'm going to stamp off, and I'm going to stamp across the bottom. Stamp down, stamp on, stamp down, stamp on. Okay, so now I have that pretty little, what's that called? Like a cross hatch? I'm not real sure. Maybe that's not a word. I thought it was. I could be mistaken. Okay. Next up, we need to do our masking. So let's go ahead and grab our masks. So I'm just going to pull off the backing. You might just have a post-it note, and that's fine too. So we're just going to position our bird mask right on top of that bird that is all beautifully colored. Okay, I'm going to bring in my boho blue and a blender brush. So I'm just going to pick some of that ink up, and I'm just going to go right around the bird. I'm not trying to cover in all of that fairy vanilla. I'm just kind of going around just the bird. Now we're going to stamp some leaves using the garden green. So we're sticking with the same color palette. And I'm just going to stamp right on top. Let's put some down here. See, I'm stamping right on top of that mask. radical, I know. And let's put a little bit there. And I'm going to stamp again without re-inking. And I want to do that again, so I'm going to stamp off. And we'll just do some right there. I'm going to leave this little bit alone. And now I'm bringing this image back in, and I'm going to stamp that with my wild wheat. Just stamp a little bit here. And stamping right on top of that mask again. Okay, time for a little bit more magic. Now, I am stamping these flowers, but this time I want them stamped in black. And I'm not going to use the StazOn because StazOn and photopolymer stamps are not best buddies. So I'm going to use my Memento. And this is where I'm going to fill it in with the flowers. Okay, so I am going to stamp right on top of my bird. Just like so. Okay, and maybe we'll do another one right here because I like to work in threes. So I'm just going to ink this little one right there. Well, we'll ink the whole thing. Better safe than sorry. Okay, so I'm going to stamp this one. I'm just barely stamping on my mask here on that corner, okay, on that side. So now I'm going to add some color, and I'm going to add the color while the mask is still on. And this time I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Blends. So I'm using the light and dark Flirty Flamingo because I love this color. And this is just going to break up all the different, you know, Cajun craze and the more mustard. Just add some really pretty color. So just color that all in. And it's okay that some of that green is going to show through because who says that's just not a leaf on top of the flower? Okay, now my dark. I'm going to add a bit more light, work that in. I'm going to take my dark and do the berries. And for the leaves, I'm going to use the light and dark Old Olive. My favorite of all the greens. I love it. I don't know if this is supposed to be leaf, but I'm making it a leaf down here. So using these different color mediums, I think is a really fun way to combine our stamping products. And of course, if you don't have blends, you can stick with your inks. If you only have certain colors of inks, you could use your blends or your pencil crayons. Like, just, you know, use what you have and just have fun with it. Okay, I need a yellow, so I'm going to take a Daffodil Delight, a dark Daffodil Delight, and I'm just going to go in the center of these flowers. Okay. Are you ready for the magic, friends? Are you ready for the magic? Where's my take your pick tool? I'm going to carefully peel this off. Look at that. Oh, I broke his little foot a little bit. I was afraid of that, but that's okay. Look at that. All that's left is that branch. Isn't that something? For the branch, we're going to use Early Espresso. I'm just going to put a little bit on my block. Don't need much. And I'm going to pick that up with my water painter, squeeze in the water because I don't want full intensity with that color. I have way too much water, so I'm just dabbing it on. There we go. And now I'm going back with a little bit more of that brown. Maybe we'll put a little bit on his legs. And that's it. So pretty. Little sparrow tucked in the branches with all those pretty leaves and flowers. Let's finish our card. Okay, I want some splatters, and I have too much water on here, so I'm just going to dab that off. And I need to put my mask back on because I forgot about the splattering part. So let's just put Mr. Birdie mask on again. This part is optional, but I do love splattering. So I'm squeezing this again. Okay. So I'm going to splatter on my card base first, and I'm going to tap the aqua painter, the water painter, to my finger and just splatter. Okay, and what I like to do is turn my cardstock around when I'm splattering, and you can do as much or as little splattering as you desire, and I am fine with that. I don't want any more than that. And I'm going to do some on here as well. There. I think that's good as I go in and do more. Okay. I think I am going to do more on this actually. Right in this corner here, I want some more. I'm going to make it a little more intense as well. See? I added a little bit more ink. Okay. I need to stop. I'm going to set this aside to dry. I'm going to peel off my bird again. And look, I've got all the, let's get this off here. Just a few little splatter marks in there. Subtle, but pretty. And now I'm going to glue him to my die cut, my boho blue die cut. This isn't quite dry, so I'm going to zap it with my heat tool. So at this point, it's up to you if you want your card to go landscape, but I knew I wanted my card to go portrait. Okay, so I'm going to put my bird on right there like so, and I need to stamp my sentiment. So I'm going to stamp my sentiment directly on my card right up here in this corner, and the sentiment that I'm using for that is from Encircled in Nature, and I'm using You Mean So Much to Me. And I am going to stamp that with my black memento again because I am using my photopolymer stamp. I haven't glued this on yet. I'm just using it to make sure I can position this where I want. Stamp it down, hold it for a second, let that ink really get into the paper. Don't wiggle, don't rock it. Perfect. Look at that script. Holy moly, is that not awesome? Okay, now it's time to put our bird on, and I'm using dimensionals for that. Maybe, if I can find them. Here they are. So I have just enough of the berries peeking through up here, a little bit of the flowers down here. Very pretty. And now I'm going to make a bow with my ribbon maker here. Just a handy dandy little tool. And of course I'm using boho blue ribbon. Just trim those ends. Okay, and I'm going to put my bow right there. I think I'm going to use tear and tape for that, as well as my glue dots. I do like to use glue dots to hold my ribbon bows where I want them to. So I'm going to put a little glue dot right here and just pull that up a little bit. And another one right there. Don't want to cover the tail feathers too much. So just pull that up a little bit as well. And that little extra bit of tear and tape will really help hold that in place. And that was a great tip shared to me by someone on my YouTube channel. One of my wonderful viewers shared that tip to me. It's a great tip. And I'm just going to trim this ribbon up just a teeny tiny bit. And then of course that means I need to do the same thing over here. And there is the first card completed. And for the inside of my cards, I'm just using computer paper that I have cut down to measure 4 by 5¼ with a little bit of adhesive across the top. Sometimes I use our regular cardstock and put it on the inside. Sometimes I'll, of course I'll stamp my sentiment, but sometimes I'll decorate the inside a little bit more. But I don't do that a whole lot. I always stamp my sentiments for sure. But I like to leave my insides alone because it depends on the occasion and the sentiment and the person that I'm giving my card to. So if I wanted to really decorate the inside up and was going to do some stamping and coloring, I would use our white or our vanilla cardstock. But otherwise, I would stamp my sentiment and write my my words down to the recipient. So that is card number 1. I am so stinking pleased with that, and I hope you guys have a lot of fun making this card.